Welcome to the Even Better podcast, where your host, Sinikka Waugh of Your Clear Next Step, brings you exciting content about making communities better by helping people get even better at work.
Welcome, everyone. We are so glad you're here joining in. This is Sinikka Waugh with the Even Better podcast, part of our ongoing mission here at Your Clear Next Step to help you have even better workdays so that together we can co-create better communities. I am so thrilled today to have with us as our guest, Kathy Towner. Kathy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me, Sinikka.
So for those of you who do not know Kathy, you are in for a treat. We are delighted to welcome Kathy here. If you have seen the magic of Your Clear Next Steps website, Kathy is a source of the magic behind that. Kathy has been helping us host our website for many years here, and Kathy serves small businesses here for over 20 years in the central Iowa community and beyond. She provides website WordPress consulting and content management and website development. She is an expert in small business email marketing and social media marketing services. She focuses on saving the business owner time and money. I can attest to this, while growing and retaining strong customer base. And what she values and demonstrates over and over and over is the value of relationships. So I've also seen Kathy in her role, while certainly providing those technical support services, I've also seen her provide her support in community groups and local business activities. And I've seen her serve in NAWBO Iowa. And I know that she provides leadership roles in the American Marketing Association and the Association of Women in Communication and the Iowa Society of Association Executives. My goodness, your volunteer work on the boards of Opportunity on Deck and Beaverdale Neighborhood Association. Kathy, you serve and you build relationships all over the place, as well as helping your clients build businesses. Thank you so much for that.
Oh, thank you. That was fun to hear.
Well, it is such a joy. I've watched you from the earliest days that we have worked together. I've delighted in the ways that you have connected with us and that you've gotten to know us as a business and as the way we serve our customers. Before you sought to serve us, you got to know us. And I really treasured that. And I can only imagine that that's what you do in all of your roles and as you serve all of your customers.
You know, that's part of the fun. And that's why I'm still here after 25 years this year. So I think I enjoy getting to know people. And then I started to realize that I loved getting to know businesses. And as I get to know someone and their business, I may or may not be something they need to hire, but I still love supporting the small businesses regardless.
Yeah. And you do that exceptionally well. So thank you. Thank you. So we are here talking about, and I love this connection that you're drawing, right? The title of today's session is around 3 life skills for better living and better marketing. And this is so cool. You've drawn these connections, and I'm all about connections. So I love this. Mm-hmm. So 3 life skills for better living and better marketing.
Yep.
So let's dive right in. The first one is on listening. Something that I will tell you is a challenge for many of us. So let's unpack that a little bit. A life skill of listening.
I think it occurred to me when I was thinking this through for our podcast today that these ideas do cross over and they weave in and out of things that I've paid attention to over the years, just on a personal interest level. And then into my business. So I'm in the business of communications. You know, my background, education, I was a PR major, journalism department at Iowa State. So we were all about communicating. And also then I was 15 years in outside sales. And, you know, any professional salesperson is getting trained repeatedly in things like listening. So there's elements to this particular skill that really do cross over between your personal life, obviously, and your marketing or your business life. And so I think it's just so important to refresh maybe what you know and pay attention to in the process of listening. And so on the personal scale, the idea of being a good listener inevitably involves, I think the first thing is setting aside your own expectations in order to receive what you're hearing. So on a personal level, if you can practice setting aside everything you think you're going to hear and open that up a little broader to how can I hear this in a way that is not predetermined by what I think I'm going to hear. So those are just some random thoughts I'm having. And I tend to listen to things like this podcast or a program. And there was Celeste Headley did a podcast that I was listening to in my car. She had 10 rules to a better conversation. And they were all around the idea of better listening. A couple of those rules were, if you don't know, say so. And so this is a listening skill where, if you're listening and you genuinely want to understand and you genuinely don't, then don't pretend that you do. And so just tuck that away, because we're going to come back to that in a minute. Stay out of the weeds, which is a conversation skill that is, all about going too far into details. Mm-hmm. And so as you're listening, there might be an opportunity for you to respond, but don't go on too long that you distracted the conversation. And then be brief, which also is something we'll tuck away till later. And then Stephen Covey, I had one quotation here. He says, most of us don't listen with the intent to understand. Most of us listen with the intent to reply. So if you think about that, that's what I was just saying earlier, was a really super good listener is someone who's listening with the more open mind, not with the intention of, not even hearing what you're saying, but focusing on what I'm going to say next.
Right.
And that happens all the time. So now in sales, they might tell you otherwise. When you're in business, you might learn in your sales training that you need to listen for cues. Mm-hmm. So you're maybe not listening to everything, but you're being a good listener enough to know where that person's coming from. And then you're listening specifically for 2 or 3 cues that you're going to bring back into the conversation to enable you to focus that person on those things that we need to focus on next in order to better qualify them for whatever it is that you think they need that you're selling. So you can actually manage that conversation in a way as a salesperson that you can listen and hear what you need to hear so that you can actually then have a conversation where they are saying what you then want them to say next, because you've been a good listener. You've heard the right things. You've picked out the things that are going to matter from what you have in your sales kit. And then you connect the dots and they end up telling you what I really need is this. And you're like, well, just so happens that's what I have. So that's where listening might come into a sales call. Now, listening skills also come into marketing. All right. So I'm making the shift. So we talk about listening in a digital world, and that means something a little different. So how do we listen to our customers when maybe we have nothing but a digital relationship?
Yeah.
How do we listen? And so I think a lot of small business owners, which is really who I deal with, if they have any marketing going on, a lot of times they have invested just enough time and money to get some things done in marketing. But one of the things that falls off the list if they're busy is going back into what you're doing and actually reviewing the marketing results. Mm-hmm. So let's say, for example, we have decided finally to create a monthly email campaign or a weekly email campaign that goes out to some of our good customers. And if we never go back in and look at the results of that campaign, we're not listening, because campaign results are how we listen. Marketing research is how we listen. And one of the best ways to listen is to go back into those digital campaigns and see where the interests are. Take a look at who actually are the audience members that are interested. Who are they? And I did this spring. I went through some of my more active customers just to see, what type of customers are in my best audience list. And it's kind of shocking sometimes when you do that, because you can see where you were perceiving that your best customers, you're going out and trying to sell to, with these characteristics, when the reality is, if you listen and you listen and you look at the data, perhaps the money that you're making is coming from customers that look more like this. So break that down, spend some time listening with your data, do the research. Research and results are the listening element of your marketing program.
It's really interesting. I wondered genuinely, you put a statement out there a few moments ago and said, how do we listen in this digital world? And I was really inside my head throwing up my hands going, how do we listen in this digital world? And you brought it back together for us, the research and the analysis of that data, the analysis of the marketing campaign results, that is how we listen.
It can tell you so much. When I first got turned on to email marketing, this was over 20 years ago when it was brand new. Yeah. One of the things I was working on back then was a neighborhood newsletter. It was via email. And I think there was some sort of election going on, maybe city council. And we had listed 3 different candidates in the newsletter, and we had connected each of the candidates' names to a link to their website. And I remember the aha moment because I went back into the email results and I was watching as people were clicking on the candidates. And to me, it was more or less a straw poll. Mm-hmm. I was kind of seeing live in action which candidate was getting more clicks. Now, that's just a very simple thing. And that was way back then. Yeah. But that's kind of what turned me on because I was trying to imagine what else could we learn?
Yeah.
With simple result strategies like this. So yeah, that's part of listening. And that is going to enable you to really have the more efficient use of your time when you are trying to focus on sales and marketing, because I think a lot of small businesses spend a lot of money marketing to people that are never going to buy their services, because they haven't spent the time to figure out exactly who it is that they do business with.
For sure. But I think as I look at the struggles that so many of our clients talk about, just peripherally, this is not a space that we're in. We just wind up in conversations because we're all sharing the same pain and the changing algorithms and the frustrations of email campaigns and the various marketing. We send email messages like so many others do, and the algorithms and the email spam filters that prevent so many of them getting through. So you spend however many dollars that you spend out of your marketing budgets putting together these messages or these campaigns, and you watch the percentage of the messages that even get through dwindle and dwindle and dwindle and dwindle as the spam filters or the various control filters get more and more and more sophisticated on the far end, and even messages that you thought the people on the other end wanted to get them aren't getting them.
It's a resource battle. It's a battle for resources. And it's important to in that scenario to remember to focus on relevant content. And that might lead us into our next
point.
Yeah. So the content has to be relevant from the get-go, or you might lose interest from folks that are on your email list.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. So if you're just joining us in this podcast episode, we are here with Kathy Towner. And so we're talking about 3 life skills for better living and better marketing. And of course, if you've listened to an Even Better podcast in the past, you've heard that listening is one of those skills that we should get better at. And Kathy Towner is yet another voice advocating for good listening. And she's pointing out how listening is not only good for better living, but also good for better marketing, and has just made a great point for how to make listening work in the digital space. So if you're just joining us, rewind and listen to the beginning of this episode. And then now you're ready for point 2, which we're going to get to, which is less is more. Unpack that for us a little bit, Kathy.
Mm-hmm. Sure. We've all heard it, and it's one of those things that I tend to champion. It sort of defines me. I love this mantra, less is more. And I mean, while I can appreciate, I think just yesterday I saw a meme and it was Dolly Parton talking about maybe less is more, but she prefers more. So that's fine. I mean, but generally speaking, for this moment in time, less is more is kind of a thing that I just cherish. And so one of the ways, of course, in our daily life to try to, as business owners, as people with lots of things on our calendar, less is more is going to, for me, mean simplifying your life a little bit. I've got a big sign over here. I looked over here because I have simplify, and it's maybe reducing some of the things that you commit to. I know as women business owners, a lot of times we hear in the conversation, how do I say no to things? That's part of less is more, because that's a difficult thing to do. So over time, I think as you are more experienced and you have more confidence, you can be selective about saying yes. And it's not about saying no, it's about saying, I have said yes to something else that I'm 100% focused on, and that's how I say no to things, is that I've truly intentionally set my commitments already. My time is here and here and here. And so I think that that's part of the less is more conversation. Where I go with this in terms of my interest in my profession are less is more in communications. So you can take that same theme and talk about conversations. You can talk about getting to the point. You can talk about the writing skills. And so in my world, I was trained in journalism, not English literature and or philosophy or theology. So just so that you know where I'm coming from on this. In journalism, we were initially taught the inverted pyramid style, where you start with the most important thing because maybe that's all they'll ever see. And then you fill in a little more details and a little more details after that. So the inverted pyramid style of writing, of presenting content in journalism comes in really handy if you think about it when you're writing for the digital world. Because as we all know now, and another podcast I was listening to recently was called How to Write Less and Say More. And it was the founder of Axios. He's telling us that you really need to rethink how you communicate if you want it to stick, because the data tells us that nobody's really reading what you're writing anymore. There's got to be less words, and you've got to say what you need to say in fewer words. And I was an early adopter of Twitter. I think because this to me is a challenge I just love. I love the idea of having something to say and writing 3 or 4 sentences and then trying to cut that into just, initially it was 140 characters, just trying to cut what you have to say. It's words, it's using words wisely, it's eliminating things you don't really need. And now, that was years ago. I think I probably do more of that kind of going over via email. And it's not just marketing emails. I tend to rewrite every email I write, because in my head, I'm thinking, when someone reads this, what do they really need to read? They don't need to read all the fluff. They don't need to read the why I couldn't be there. They don't, they just need to know maybe what's next or what you need me to do. Put it in the subject line. Put it right there. That's kind of the communications strategy, that less is more, is all about getting to the point and having the most critical information up front. And I think when you're planning out, moving into the marketing, when you're planning out any kind of social media campaign or email marketing campaign or your website, you're going to want to really nail down ahead of time who your audience is that you're trying to communicate with. Mm-hmm. And what is it you want them to do? What's the action you need them to take? And if you can safely communicate that action in fewer words, then it's going to stick. Because if you're communicating to the masses with a whole lot of words because you think they need to hear it all, they're never going to read it. Mm-hmm. And if they do, it's not going to stick. Yep. And so that's 2 different things. Number one, they may read it if they're a friend or they're interested, but down the line, they're not going to remember. It's not going to stick. Nope. They're not going to repeat it for you. They're not going to champion you to someone else because what they read was too many words. So less is more in order to get your point across. And it's really, you're doing a favor to your audience, to the people on the other end of your message. And if they need more, then you've got a scroll at the bottom, or you've got, call me. If they need more after you've presented the information, then they will find you. But I think there's a real skill, and not everybody, it's not in everybody. No. The idea of less is more requires the good use of words and the ability to see through the clutter.
Yep. Well, I think that's one of the things that you helped us with I'm trying to think. The quote has been attributed to all kinds of people, but when I heard it, I think it was C.S. Lewis's mom. The quote was C.S. Lewis's mom was on her deathbed and she was writing a letter to her son. And she wrote pages and pages and pages of a letter on her deathbed. And she wrote it to him. And as she signed it, she wrote, "If I had had more time, I would have written less." And that message that I'm sorry I rambled for all these pages. If I had had more time, I would have written less. And that realization that to really craft, to really hone, and to really hone in on the exact right words, the exact right messages, the stuff that's going to stick, the stuff that really is curated to be the right message that will stick and that will hone in. And I think about our project management curriculum that we've been teaching for however 14 years now, that we have 15 years that we've been teaching the same project management curriculum that we've crafted. And I know the nuggets and I know the sentence, and I can teach for 8 hours in a day, but there are 7 sentences that the participants will walk away with and they will remember, because I've learned how to distill that 2 hours of content into a sentence that is distinct and memorable and short and pithy and repeatable and down to the nugget, that then someone could put as a banner headline on a thing, and to your triangle, the pyramid, right? But it takes effort and it takes time. And you, for our website, I remember the pages and pages and pages of content that we had at one point, and we brought it to you and you said, "Are you sure?" or something along those lines, or "Are you sure?" And you helped us craft to something that is much more succinct at this point, because you're right, not everybody has that resident in them, and it takes time to get to
and some of that is a roadmap. Some of that content, when you have a lot of content, it obviously could be presented in so many different ways, and it's never perfect because we all have different minds and mindsets, which is something I'll talk about in a minute. But the idea of, I'm always just challenged, and I love this challenge to put it into a minimum amount of words, and then also to somehow try to think about all the ways someone could misunderstand what I'm saying. Right? I mean, this is just your day-to-day communications on a board, or in family, or whatever. Even when you talk, it's like, when I said that, that's not what I meant. So was it your fault for hearing it wrong? Or was it my fault for not being aware that what I said could have been taken 3 or 4 different ways? And not that fault, I shouldn't have brought that in, but people do hear things differently. And so when I read something in an email that I'm sent, and I think to myself, well, I wonder if they meant this or this. It could be taken 2 or 3 different ways. And I know they didn't mean that, but then I need to go back and clarify. And then we have the email back and forth. And, again, back to that, just being courteous to the people that you're communicating with. If you can be as clear and succinct as possible, you're doing everyone a favor.
Absolutely. It's better living and getting your message through, and better marketing.
Yeah.
So if you are just joining us, we're here with Kathy Towner of Win Communications. It's a wonderful, wonderful resource here in Central Iowa. We're talking about 3 life skills for better living and better marketing. We talked about listening and less is more. We are going to move on to the 3rd one, living in the moment. Kathy, I've seen you do this in multiple ways at multiple points in the years that we've known each other. I'm anxious to hear what you have to say about this tip right here.
Well, isn't this a fun one? And it's, again, just like less is more. It's kind of a mantra of mine. We have to cherish the past. And I know there's living in the past, but I like to live with the past right now. So that's just a different mindset. So I know there are things that I miss about the past, but I can't live in the past. I have to live in the moment. So I changed that little phrase that you hear now and then from living in the past to living with the past, and that puts me back in the moment, and that's just a mindset. And then the future is not living in the moment. We all need to make plans and have things to look forward to and things like that, but there's that balance, again, we all talk about it, where you're focused too much on tomorrow, you're not getting enough out of the moment today. So I think it's an obvious thing. It's worth thinking about. It's worth paying attention to every morning. People set intentions, people do their daily journals. There's a lot of conversation around the idea of living in the moment, whether that's the moment, right now, or the moment is today. How big is the moment that you're living in? Do you not know that you have a meeting in 5 minutes? Or are you living, just with the listening skills? I can bring that back into living in the moment, because a lot of what happens when you're communicating one-on-one with someone is, if you can declutter the rest of what's out there and not have all of tomorrow and yesterday and the outside world in your head, your listening skills get better. You can listen to what is happening now. Pay attention to the now, the moment, right now, not what yesterday had to say and not what you expect tomorrow to say, but what's being said right now. And you can hear that better. So living in the moment applies to listening skills as well. One of the things that living in the moment brings up is mindset. And I just want to mention this because it was such a good podcast. There were 2 in a row on 2 different weeks of this Hidden Brain podcast. You can hear it on NPR on Saturdays or Sundays. I don't remember. But anyways, this one was in particular about mindset. And it was about the biology of mindset even, and how it can control your physical, how your mind, because your brain is physical. I mean, if you think about it, and how mindset, whatever it is that's happening neurologically when you have a mindset, can definitely affect physiology. And it was just so cool. So I just want to bring that up, hidden brain mindset. And that comes into living in the moment. So if you decide in advance that you're the person that is going to get 100% out of today, and that's your mindset, then by the end of the day, you're probably more fulfilled than you would be otherwise, because your day was 100%. So bring that mindset in to your business. And to me, what living in the moment brings up is presenting you and your business in the most effective way you can today. And don't forget that your digital presence is part of that. So lots of times when I finally get the phone call, we've had this same website for 5 years, we need to revise it. Their mindset is, I need to do perhaps this one-time revision so that I don't have to do this again for another 5 years. And what it really needs to be, and what your tools are so capable of anymore, are that you need to present yourself in the digital world fresh and new every day, or all the time. Not now, every day might be more of a social media strategy, but on your website, certainly living in the moment with a fresh take on everything that is your business. It doesn't mean that you set something up as your website now and then expect it to do that for you for 3 years at a time anymore. That's not where we're at. It's got to be more of a resource. It's got to be where people go to validate that you are still active and on top of things, and they already know what you do by the time somebody gets to your website. I mean, the world has changed a little bit. The tools that are out there for people to discover what you do are abundant. They'll look at Google, they'll ask questions on Facebook. By the time they land on your website, why are they there? They're looking to validate and inquire. They are ready to find how you're going to serve them. Mm-hmm. And so you need to be able to present those solutions in fresh time, now, in the moment, and not in yesterday's language, So that's kind of the connection there. And the only other thing I had associated with this was living in the moment and decision making. So I just wanted to touch on the idea of being able to make quick decisions. As a business owner, we don't have a lot of time. And a lot of times we have to say, I'm going to do this or that and make a quick decision. One of the things I did also earlier this year in my review of my own business, it's been 25 years, I decided to do the deep dive and almost like starting over and see, who am I, what am I doing, that kind of thing, and set some priorities and set some values and understand my capacity. So once you have studied that about yourself in life or your business, your capacity, your priorities, and your values, then when it comes time to make that quick decision, you're set. Early on when I had children, it was family first. I mean, I didn't have to think about it, right? Because it took me a few years to understand that as a new parent. But once I really totally did understand that and allowed that to guide my decisions, my life was a lot easier. Those decisions were a lot easier.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So living in the moment becomes easier. Making those decisions becomes easier when you have that thinking time to establish those core values, know what those core values are, have that we call it a decision filter at your Clear Next Step. We have a tool that helps with our prioritization filter. What is your matrix? What are your 2 or 3 core decisions? What's the priority in which you put A before B, before C, before D, so that when you're faced with a C and a D, you know which one is which, or when you're faced with a B and a D, you know, oh, B comes before D, clearly A comes first if you know that A is A. And right. So that you can make those decisions in the moment and make those decisions, they become easier when you've thought about that prioritization, and you can live in the moment. You don't have to agonize over those kinds of decisions.
Definitely. Or carry it with you. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. You just go, okay, this is it. But then there's also, I go back to your first point about listening and making decisions. I was at the IIBA, International Institute of Business Analysis. So I was at their global conference in June, and their annual global conference. And I was listening to a couple of their thought leaders talk about that balance on decision-making and data-driven decision versus the empathy and the empowerment from those who are, the analysis that might come from being in the moment and face-to-face with customers and kind of listening, and really understanding that change does drive decisions in the moment. And you got to have your core principles, but there's also the data also has to drive those decisions. So you really do have to have this balance between here's my core values, and I also need to listen to the data. What is the data telling me? Because change is happening, right? Change. I have a core set of values that say I'm going to put my customers first, right? I'm going to listen to my customers, but I also have to pay attention to the data and say if my customers aren't buying this product anymore, then I should stop offering this product and offer this other product that the customers are buying. Just because I liked product A better doesn't mean that my customers are buying it. If the data tells me my customers are buying product B, then I should make more of product B, right? I mean, it's that balance.
Absolutely. It's hard to sell something that people aren't interested in anymore.
Right. Right. So it's that balance between my core values, here's what I value, and the balance of listening to what is the data telling me about what my customers want.
Yeah. Well, and similarly, it's the data that might tell you, maybe they want what you have, but you're actually talking about it in the wrong way. And this is a listening skill again, but take my business, for example. I'm in marketing. I could go out and talk about how I have the fastest, widget, that websites can build. And if that's not what they're interested in, then all of a sudden I'm not having a conversation with that potential client anymore.
Right. Because I'm talking about the wrong thing. Yep.
Yeah.
You bet. Well, Kathy, I am so grateful for your time and your insights. And as we're getting close to wrapping, this would not be the Even Better podcast if I did not ask my trademark question here. What's making you even better these days?
Oh, I can tell you that without question is the people in my life, family, friends, and neighbors. Every night, I'm thankful. So I have so many reasons to be thankful for the family, friends, and neighbors in my life that they are why I am still here. Family, friends, neighbors, even that includes business friends, of course. Of course. So yeah, that's what I'm grateful for.
Lovely. Lovely. Thank you. Well, if you are just joining us, you are catching the very tail end. So you got to go back and rewind. So thank you for jumping on, but go back to the beginning, because we have been talking with Kathy Towner of Win Communications, who has been providing her expertise in 3 life skills for better living and better marketing. And she's been talking about listening and less is more and living in the moment. Some nuggets here, both on what they are and how to do them for better living and better marketing. Kathy, thank you so much for being part of this day. We're so grateful to have you.
Well, thank you, Sinikka. I was really happy to be here.
Thank you. And for our listeners, thank you for joining in. It's been great to have you. And on behalf of all of us here at Your Clear Next Step, we hope the rest of your day is even better.
Thank you for tuning in today. The Even Better podcast will be back with more content soon. But in the meantime, subscribe to our podcast or check out our website at yourclearnextstep.com for more information. See you next episode.